I asked UJAM if they would be open to send us some licenses so we could do a 3 producers 3 free plugins challenge, but now with 3 plugins but with 3 UJAM plugins. And so Folrian Mrugalla, Alex, Reid and I are going to make a track using virtual bassist Slap, virtual guitarist Sparkle and virtual drummer Legend, and we are only allowed to use these 3 instruments. Why do I want to do this? Why this whole project that took very long? First reason, I like working with UJAM Plugins and I also like working with the UJAM company, and they were nice enough to give us licenses. Second reason, I like the format 3 producers, 3 free plugins, 3 producers, 3 UJAM plugins. It's stolen from Enter 1. Yeah, good format. Third reason, UJAM plugins are kind of genre specific, and there's a tiny bit of me thinking maybe all of the tracks will sound a bit too similar if we all use the same 3 UJAM plugins, because they don't give you the same sonic variety as a wavetable synth. Interestingly enough, the 2 producers I invited both usually don't work with this kind of plugin. They both like to have control over the minutest of details in their sound. Personally, I don't work like that. I like to have an instrument that works and makes something efficiently. I'm more of a big picture guy, you might say. But these 2, they also mention it in their breakdowns, they might miss out on some control. Or will they? Let's say that's the 4th reason. Have fun.
Wait a minute, before we can get started, I have to show you something. I want to show you what the song that I created sounded like the first time I exported it and the current export. Let's go. I think that's pretty cool, but now check out what it became. And I think that's just beautiful. This just shows when you full commit to a project and give it all you got, you can turn around quite some stuff. A full beat with just 3 instruments: guitar, bass, drums. For most rock bands, this is the most generic setup imaginable. But if you know my music, you know that I'm usually more the sound design kind of guy, and I haven't touched a guitar for years, I guess. This was quite challenging. Also, one of the biggest difference between these 3 plugins and the ones that I, let's say, usually use is that these plugins have a very specific vibe. For example, VD Legend is not just a drum sampler. It is a drum sampler that always tries to have some sort of indie rock sound. You can make it sound different, but that's what they are designed for. It's a pretty modern direction of instrument plugins that I wasn't interested in a lot so far. So when I was invited to this challenge, I immediately noticed that something is going down that I'm not prepared for. And the moment I realized that, I was looking forward to this challenge. I want to give you 3 reasons for why the workflow surprised me. The first thing I want to talk about is that I actually put the guitar instrument and the bass instrument onto the same track with the same notes, even though the guitar is polyphonic and the bass line is monophonic. I know this is not some weird Bitwig trickery of filtering certain notes or something, but actually a feature of these plugins. See, this is the instrument Sparkle, which is the rhythm guitar, and it just plays its thing. And here we have the layer of the bass line. And you can see there is also polyphonic notes going into the bass plugin, but it still doesn't play polyphonic notes but monophonic ones. And the reason for that is because these plugins are designed to not just interpret the notes directly, but with the expressions that are designed with the lower keys. Yeah, and what I really liked about that was that it just worked immediately. I started with the guitar, and the moment I added the bass to this thing, it immediately did something that really made sense. For my second example, I want to show you something in VD Legend, the drum plugin. See, and this is exactly what I meant when I initially said that this plugin doesn't just sample drums, but instead gives you a certain vibe that is kind of recognizable in the indie rock scene. On the left, we can dive presets. What this basically does is it is a combination of settings that you can also make down here. For each of the drum types, you can choose different types. And on the right side we have basically, I think, different post effect chains. I think these plugins are not meant to be understood, they are just meant to be performed, and I did that. Next up I want to talk about the micro timing features of Sparkle. First of all, you have the speed one, which just plays the rhythm twice as fast or half as fast. Also there is a humanize knob, which basically just randomizes the note a little bit, and swing. But these are the things that you already know from most plugins that have some sort of timing control. What I find a little bit outstanding here is the push and pull feel parameter. What this does is it takes all of the offbeat notes, and when you are saying push, then they come a little bit too early, or you pull it towards pull, where the guitarist is a little bit more laid back and feels like he just took a hit from the bong or something. Yeah, and that really, just as the name of the parameter suggests, adds some nice feel to the performance. As you can see, I pulled it more towards push because the sound is already pretty slow the way it is on 77 BPM, and I just wanted to make it feel a little bit more like the guitar player tries to add some friction to the music very subtly. If you are interested in a full in-depth version of this production breakdown, then you should check out some of the links below. One of them will be to my video about that. The next thing I want to talk about is how come my project sounds like it has so many more instruments, even though the challenge was to just use the guitar, the bass and the drums. I didn't cheat because we were allowed to use effects as much as we wanted to, slap pitch map on it. I came up, for example, with this organ-ish sound. Here is another melody. Then now here we have the vocal tracks. You know, when you make a first take, it's like you don't expect it to be a good take, so you don't put any effort into it, and that sometimes makes it just so natural. I decided to not put it into this video because it would be pretty long. But now let's finally enjoy the full song together.
German
die in deiner Hand liegt, wenn alle Sterne gut für dich stehen und die Winde deinen Weg finden, wirst du sehen, die Zauberwinde ist schön, sie begehren seine Zauberkraft.
How do you do that melody?
Erwarten sie, warten auf das Ende ihrer Ungeduld. Lässt sich rufen Zauberwinde.
And it's like happy sad. I don't know how to explain the melody and everything.
That's already it?
Wow, I wanted more. I wanted more.
Yeah, the main question I have about that one is how he managed to get that melody that was far in the background pretty high. I'm curious to see that.
Amazing job. Amazing job. I love it.
Great melody on the vocals.
Hey everyone, I once again was invited by Changtux to participate in another challenge. For me that was quite the challenge, because UJAM has some limitations for someone like me that likes to go in detail on how I want to make the sound. So let me show you how I did it. Okay, so what I did was a rock-inspired track. I just used basses, guitars and the drums. So for the bass I have this bass line. And as you can see here, I'm using a lot of processing. Not too much compression, but I'm using a lot of EQ because I wanted that gnarly mid-tones that the bass has. I'm using the full character, subtle amp, a little bit of warm drive, and a lot of drive right here. Fuzz is in the middle, and in the chorus it sounds like this, but it plays just in that dum da na 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 moment. Now for the guitars, as you can see, I have a lot of layers. That's because one guitar on its own wasn't enough for me. I wanted to make something big, something strong. So for instance, on its own, one of the main guitars sounds like this. The other one sounds like this. And the final one sounds like this. And if you combine them, we have this. Now, as you can see, I have other guitars. This one and this one are panned left and right, but I'm not using them at the beginning, as you can see for the MIDI. They start on the first chorus. Now, that's not all the guitars. I added these guitars for the bridge. I did wanted to use like the player that comes with UJAM, because I thought, well, if I'm using these plugins, why not use some phrases? Still, as you can see, I'm playing around with other notes to add more variation. The last two guitars are this one and this other one. Now all the guitars together sounds like this. Which is going to make sense once we play everything at the same time. But let's go to the drums now. As you can see, I have 4 drum tracks. This is just because I like to process everything separately. And even though Upbeat has these options for the multiple outputs, I still did these layers because I wanted to be able to see each of the individual tracks. And also it's a workflow thing for me because it's easier to get the multi-tracks. So I'm going to play these all together. Just bear in mind that this is the kick, this is the snare and toms, this is the hi-hat, and these are the cymbals. Whenever I get a new drum plugin, the first thing I test is the velocity, because a good drum plugin will have different layers of velocity, so you can program softer and harder hits. And that's why I'm playing a lot with that here in the snare. As you can hear, I'm also playing with the velocity of the hi-hat. And the way I'm processing it is the standard for me, especially on the snare. Right here I'm using the SSL Blitzer because I wanted a lot of compression to make it bigger and fatter. So the processing I'm doing to the whole drums, the SSL native drum strip, I just wanted to test it because I just got it when I was making this video. And I'm using it mostly like an EQ, full text style EQ, also for the low end and the high end. Then my favorite parallel compression with a Fairchild kind of compressor. And finally, just a little bit of saturation with this wonderful plugin by Clownhelm, which is free. And that's it.
That's complex. Great guitar sound. Way better than mine. Also love how many guitars were used.
Nice progression, very dynamics and all that.
This is definitely a way different vibe than Florian and I went for. Way harder.
Kinda artsy rhythms.
I really feel he took Sparkle and Legend into a different territory than they were designed for, which is cool. This is very interesting, this part. And again, great melody from Sparkle, which I found very difficult to do. Extremely easy.
Cool.
I have to say, very good drum sound and very different from how Legend usually sounds.
Really wonder how we managed to make this guitar sound like a melodic synthesizer, because it really doesn't want to sound like that. But I guess you can make it sound like that.
Very good guitar sound, and again, it doesn't sound like some Sparkle presets, it sounds harder than Sparkle presets, so he had to have done quite a lot himself. So the first thing I did was I took Virtual Drummer Legend and I created a sound I liked. Sounds like this. And I wanted to do something odd meter, something a bit more experimental. I ended up going with 13/4. I just wrote it where it took me, and that's how it ended up, with some weird syncopations and a weird turnaround, so that it ends up being 13/4, but it's not supposed to sound very complex. If you listen to it in the end, in the full mix, you shouldn't think about the meter. Next, I tried really hard and long to come up with something for Sparkle, the guitar. I explored some loops in the player section. It was this loop. And I grabbed the MIDI of it like this, dragged it into my DAW, and then you have to switch over from player to instrument for it to work. This part down here is the MIDI you get from the plugin. And up here you can enter the chords you wanted to play. But the tricky part was that it's a 4/4 pattern, and I had to adjust it in a way that it would fit with my drum beat. I also added this phaser. Basically, I got this 13/4 groove by adding an additional beat at the end of 3 repeats of 4/4. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 1, 2. And that's what I did. I copied this last section of the guitar over, so it goes before it loops. Next, I added a bass. It's a pretty cool bass, I think. I just created a sound in slap, and it sounds like this in context. No effects on it. And then I wanted to get a bit of melody into this whole loop I created, and that was quite difficult because virtual guitarist doesn't really lend itself to playing melodies. Even if you're in instrument mode, you play it kind of like you make a chord shape in this region, and then you pluck the strings down here. But getting intentional melodies that you think of first and then try to play it on this guitar is very challenging. But after trying for quite long, I came up with this melody. On here, I just have a bit of UFX reverb, 80s mode. And then this loops twice. This is verse number 1, so there's some vocals on top of it. And after that, we go into this weird breakdown, which ended up being 21/4. You probably could count it in a different way. I sampled a bass note that originally sounded like this, put some effects on it, and I made this little very weird progression. then I came up with this weird idea. What I'm intending is that you feel the first strum of this guitar on the downbeat. 1, 2, 3, 4. But I thought it could be interesting if the drums disagreed with that and they said, no, this is offbeat. Downbeat. But then the drums enter. Very standard 4/4 drum groove here, and a lot of sidechain compression on this virtual Guitarist SPARKLE. Without any effects, this sounds like this. Then I'm adding a phaser. I'm adding an exciter, equalizer, wider, and the sidechain compressor. And to make this transition work as good as possible, I added this impact and this kick sample. I don't know if we were allowed to use samples, but I did it. To make it really feel like it is on the downbeat, I added this little reverse kick. After that, I transitioned into verse 2. It is quite a bit lower in intensity, just to build it up later with this riser. I automated the volume of the riser so it always kind of accentuates the offbeat. I used the kick sample to make a bit of a tom fill, just by pitching it up, and then we fooled the brain again, thinking the downbeat is on the off. And then I cheated. I used USynth Drive because I wanted a bit more sonar variety. So I used this pad. This is the only virtual instrument I used that wasn't allowed, but I used it, and it's free. It's by UJAM. I thought I'll allow myself this rule break. You know me, I can't adhere to creative rules. I will always do what I think the track needs. I'm pretty happy with it. The only thing I don't know for sure is some of the leveling, some of the mix. I'm not 100% happy with, so I might change some of these aspects before I upload it somewhere. You'll find it on my Bandcamp.
Filling my time with stuff, you got something. I got a room door, but that's nothing. Coming around without the warning sign. Keeps me on my toes as the morning tides.
Great, that's amazing. Very good, very, very good.
Wow, cinematic. My favorite part was when it transitioned into this super intense part, because it didn't immediately jump into the intense part. It like went over multiple stages of reaching this point, and I think it wouldn't have worked to go there immediately, but the ability to come up with this way, that's just incredible.
It's almost like the song by Florian and the one by Santux. It's from the same band.
So out of the 3 plugins, I think Slap is probably my favorite. The Virtual Bassist series, I think, does many things really well. It's a bit limited compared to the others maybe, but the basses just sound great. I really like Virtual Bassist Dandy, and now that I've experienced and worked with Virtual Bassist Slap, I also really like that one. My second favorite would be Virtual Drummer Legend. I made a long video about that one in depth already. That one's pretty good. Virtual drummers are not my favorite virtual drums, but I really like it, and I think Legend is my favorite virtual drummer. And my third favorite, or my least favorite, would be Virtual Guitarist Sparkle. I have some gripes with how it works. I feel like I would really like to play melodies just on a keyboard, and it doesn't let you do that. There should be a third mode that lets you just play melodies. Has some good loops, but none that really sparked my inspiration. So it took me quite some time to figure out how to use it, or it took me quite some time to get over the fact that I didn't have any keys. So let us know in the comments, did these songs sound too similar? Alex Reid said, Florian's song and my song kind of sound like they're from the same band. I don't know if that's the plugin's fault. I don't even know if I agree. But what did you think? Again, thanks very much to UJAM for sending over some licenses. Go subscribe to Alex Reid, go subscribe to Folrian Mrugalla. Beats Bastel. That's the video. Hope you enjoy the songs. What are you still doing here? The video's over. I don't know if I agree.